works. But I want to talk about the running because you mentioned that a couple of times. I'm a big runner too.
Oh, cool.
And I actually wrote about this in the Washington Post, an article in the health section a few years ago, because there's a very clear link between, you're going to love this, between aerobic exercise and creativity, that immediately after exercise, and they've measured this in labs where basically they've put people on a treadmill at 20 minutes at 60% max heart rate, which is really not more than like a moderate walk. Mm-hmm. And after the treadmill, 20 minutes, they'd give those people a battery of tests, and they always score higher on these cognitive tests than people who weren't exercising. There's a chemical called, excuse me, brain-derived neurotrophic factor that gets secreted in the brain. And about 90, so this is not like snake oil. This is like legit science measured in the lab. That's about 90 minutes post-exercise, you get that benefit. So it's not, it doesn't last all day, but the good news is that, and they found that 30 minutes is about ideal. And the good news is that it's not dose responsive. So 60 minutes isn't twice as good as 30 minutes, and 90% max heart rate isn't better than 60%. But there's very, very, very clear evidence that aerobic exercise benefits has an immediate benefit on the creative process. So let's talk about that, because I've heard. So tell me how you use running as a part of your writing process.
So, it's funny because growing up, I hated running. I just loathed it. And obviously being in sports, I played baseball growing up. It's like it was required, and I was not a fast runner. And there's been little things in my life. I do this with bread as well. It's like, of course I love bread, but I've kind of tricked myself to like just pass on it, where it's almost like you kind of, I don't know. Yeah. You trick yourself like, oh yeah, don't want it. Don't need it. Or makes, maybe it doesn't make you feel great if you have too much of it. So running, I feel like I tricked myself, where now the thing that I hate, I almost like need it for my psyche. Like it is so freeing, because I just walk out the door and there's a park not far. It's about a 4-mile loop that I do. And I just, put on my headphones and put on a podcast. More so lately a podcast. I used to do music exclusively, but I kind of bounce back and forth. And I just go. And there's a couple of other guys in the band that are the same way. And I just know it because I know them well. It's like they need it. If they don't run, like you're going to just see it in their being. Like, I got to get out, I got to go. Yeah. And so it's a big thing when we're on tour. And I don't think it really was until the Midlake album that those types of experiences really, where they started to help with the writing, because obviously I'm out, I'm gone, I'm kind of in my own headspace. If I've got something on musically or even a podcast, obviously you can just go into another world of sorts, or I just turn them off altogether. And I've kind of got this melody that's been in my head, and I'm just using my run to kind of be the thing that's happening in the background while I don't have anything on, except I've just got this melody going through my head, and maybe even a turn of a lyric. And I'm like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? While you're running, you're looking around, you see things. Not necessarily trying to like, oh, I see a bird flying over, so now I'm going to write about a bird flying over, but just more of just kind of being, it's like making yourself available for something you just enter, and it just really has become a weekly ritual. I wouldn't say daily, because I try to balance it just between them. I know my knees are going to hate me probably here in about 10 years or less, but yeah, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And it serves as just a great, it serves as just kind of a great reset for me every day, a great way to start the day. And then, a possible song inspiration as well.
See, there's a couple other things that what they found also was that you need to be doing things while you run that don't require brain powers. They say running in an urban environment is not effective because you're practically going to have to worry about not getting hit by cars.
Right.
They say, and there's a study done at the University of Michigan where they found that, woods and natural environments are more effective than urban environments. But I actually use running for me as a way to solve problems. Like I'll be like, you know what, like something's not, whether it's something I'm writing or an idea I have to get through. For me, it's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go out on that run and it's going to happen then.
Right.
So do you get song ideas? Do you use that as a way, or is it more just kind of organic? Like, oh, you're running and all of a sudden a melody pops into your brain.
Probably more the latter. Not that there hasn't been like something that kind of, I want to use the run, like you said, as a problem solver. It's usually just kind of like it just happens. But yeah, I mean, especially, whatever's going on in my world, it's, I wouldn't say it's the only. I mean, obviously I have kids, I have a wife, I have, things that I have to do during the day. It's one of those things like that's just you, like you just kind of get to be alone. And I like being with people. I love being social and such, but I don't really like to run with people. I just kind of like to go on my own. Especially if you're trying to talk while you're like running. Like, this is a lot harder than being alone. So yeah, it definitely, there's kind of an excitement to it when that happens, and maybe it's within a run, maybe it's before a run, and you're like, I'm gonna get somewhere after this run. I'm not just gonna run. Like I'm gonna try to make some groundwork here on this. So yeah.
And do you do the same loop every time, or do you vary where you run?
So when I'm home, it's kind of become a boring kind of same loop, but it is a beautiful big kind of pond, lake, park, so but yes, I have to kind of get there. I just don't like to drive there. So I it's funny you mentioned that, because I don't think I've ever anything's happened on the way to that area, or once there, it's kind of like, I feel like that's when kind of things open up. But on tour, I kind of also use it as and we all do, kind of compare notes, like, where'd you go? Where'd you run? Oh man, there's this amazing stretch down there, it's almost like competitive in a way.
Right.
But yeah, on tour, obviously it's a new place every day, which is really cool. And we'll see how that goes, especially if we're going to try to do any type of writing that maybe those runs can inspire something.
Well, I'd be curious if the monotony of the run you do all the time, that loop, if eventually it's going to kind of, if you'd be more creative going on runs to different places, because it's literally stimulating to your brain, because in those runs, on those loops where it's just the same thing over and over again, if running in a different city the different scenery might inspire you a different way.
Right. I'll report back after this year of touring.
It's fascinating stuff. I mean, I've heard things like people get song ideas because the cadence inspire the cadence of the run. I've heard, songwriters tell me that they've when they've gone on hikes or something like that they've noticed that the cadence of the footsteps really gives them a melody. How about other types of, and I've heard, driving, flying, being in like any kind of movement. I guess the other thing is, and this is, I think, more of a pandemic related thing. I've heard so many songwriters tell me that they've gotten songwriting ideas doing mundane chores around the house, vacuuming, cleaning, folding clothes, like something about doing something that requires no brain power. It kind of opens up the unconscious brain, to song ideas. Has that ever happened to you? Like, those mundane activities are stimulating at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think they kind of serve in the same way as running has, and obviously having your phone with you kind of can help you kind of capture it. I remember vividly being in Nantucket and going on a bike ride, and I recorded an song idea for my solo album as I was on that bike ride. And I stopped, lay it down, put my phone back in, kept bike riding, just looking around. I mean, it's beautiful there, you know, I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's funny too, because, and I save a lot of them just because it's almost kind of, maybe that's part of the narcissism, but I think it's good to kind of, I don't know. It's like, it's kind of just seeing the where something began, and just the most human kind of like, even though I know it's on a phone, but just like, I'm just sitting there a little out of breath and kind of like trying to get this idea down. And then, oh yeah, that became this whole song, and it worked itself out. But it was just kind of this, I'll even mouth like the music, you know, where I kind of have like, you know, like what I could hear the piano or a guitar or whatever, or drum beat kind of doing, and then kind of go into singing an idea. So yeah, they're probably, maybe I'll make an album of these voice notes, you know, voice memos.